Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a bit of a snow event in the west. This is going to be taking place over the Rockies, where we'll have some areas in the higher elevations getting up over 3 feet of snowfall, but for a majority of these locations it'll be half a foot to a foot and a half. We'll be going over the projected snowfall amounts from some of the models. We won't have my snowfall forecast in today's video. I'm holding that off until we're within 3 days of the event. Right now this storm is about 5 or 6 days away from really impacting the west, so I want to wait off on that. I don't want to make an early prediction because those are pretty much useless. You're not really going to gain too much information considering that things will probably change quite a bit from now until the time of the storm. So we're going to go over a few models, time this out, give you a general idea of what to expect. I would say the most uncertainty is really in the Dakotas, Nebraska, eastern Montana, eastern Wyoming, and really what's going to happen in that region, because there are some questions on whether this will be able to maintain a cold core and bring in a little bit of snow there, or whether that'll transfer into rainfall. So we have a lot of questions to answer in today's video, so let's get right into it. Let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. We have a freeze watch in one county for Oregon, as well as some red flag warnings in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana. We have some flood watches in 4 parts of Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and a little bit of South Carolina. And then we have a few air quality alerts in southern Texas and southern Arizona. Other than that, we don't have many other notable watches or warnings over the lower 48. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 97 degrees in Falcon Lake, Texas, and Cotulla, Texas. Again, both of them up to 97. The low temperature was in Peter Sinks, Utah, where they got down to 13 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was in Smith Station, Alabama, where they got 7.96 inches of rain. And there were no snowfall reports yesterday over the lower 48. And again, all of these extremes are only for the lower 48. So this does not include Hawaii or Alaska. There were some snowfall reports up in central Alaska near Fairbanks, where they got close to a foot of snow, and the highest report I saw was 20 inches. But again, that's not going to be counted here because this is only for the continental United States. So if there's ever any confusion about that, again, this only covers the lower 48 states. So here's a look at the European model, and we're going to time this out and just kind of give you a general idea of what to expect, because most models have a fairly similar idea of what happens in this area. What they really don't understand what's going to happen with, or they really don't have a good grip on what's going to happen, is going to be up into this area right here. So there are some questions, and that would even extend into Saskatchewan in Canada. So pretty much this entire region does have some uncertainty as to whether they'll get some snowfall, because again, it's a lower lying area, flatter ground once you get east of the Rockies, and so even though they are a few thousand or a couple thousand feet up in elevation, it still might not be enough to support some snow in the Great Plains and also into the prairies of central Canada. So this would be by Sunday morning. You can see that we do have some high elevation snow in British Columbia, but mainly rain for the lower elevations. If we move this on to Sunday night, you can see not a lot changes. We still have that system up in the northwest. We have another one down in the Four Corners, but again, this one in the northwest is going to be the main system. So we have two different components. We have this one, which is down in the southern plains. This is going to be bringing up some of the warmer air ahead of the system, which means that you'll have to have some colder air on the back side of the system to counterbalance it. So that cold air on the back end will be what produces some of that snowfall. Now this red line, which you see kind of scattered all around the screen, this is indicating your 32 degree Fahrenheit line. So if you're within that red line, which would cover some parts of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, pretty much the entire west, is where you would be below freezing, and that's where it would be more likely that you could support some snowfall. So you can already see some snow breaking out by Monday morning, but it's not really anything too intense. But again, remember that we have this big plume of moisture out in the central plains. Well, as that starts to move out to the east, we start to see a little bit of strengthening over that system in the western United States. So by this point, we have a fairly well-developed storm with decent, moderate snow and rain into the northern Rockies. And again, it's mainly going to be for this area right here with the highest amounts of snowfall. And it's going to be mainly higher elevation snowfall, not necessarily just mountaintops and mountain peaks. For example, some parts of northern Nevada, you're not going to have to be that high up in elevation to get snowfall. Same applies for eastern Oregon. You're not going to really have to be that high up to see a few flurries. Nothing accumulating really, but a few flurries are possible. Also in Utah, western Colorado, although that'll be mainly in the mountains. Wyoming as well. Once you get away from the mountains, it does get quite flat in Wyoming, and they'll still see some snowfall. So it's not all high elevation snowfall. It is mostly for those higher places, but even if you're on a lower lying area, you will still probably see a little bit of snowfall depending on your elevation. Here would be by Tuesday morning, and again, it's not all high elevation snowfall. Salt Lake City, Utah, also dealing with some snow, and they're not in the mountains. They're in kind of the valley right next to the Salt Lake, and then on the east side they have some mountains, but themselves, they're not in the mountains, and they're still seeing some snowfall. So you don't have to be super high up in elevation to get snow this time of year. We're already into mid-October, so it is starting to cool down in the west. I think Salt Lake City might have a chance of getting some snow. Boise, I don't think will get snow out of this one. It looks like it'll be a little bit too warm. Cheyenne, Wyoming, it'll be a bit of a stretch, although I would not be surprised if you see some flurries mixing in there. And there are some models that have heavier snow in your area. And then if you look at Denver, I think Denver will mostly stay rain, although it's going to be a tough call because there could definitely be some transition over to snowfall as we get into Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning once it gets a little bit cooler in the evening hours. So by this point, you have some of that snow starting to develop over a good portion of the west. Now, if we were to move this on to Wednesday, or this would actually be Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and this is where we have some more of the questions. So depending on how strong the system is, that's going to really have some big implications on how much snow the lower lying areas in Wyoming and Utah get out of this, as well as Montana and maybe even some parts of the western Dakotas, western Nebraska. And that's really going to have a big implication. If this is a stronger system, what that can do is push down some of the, with some of the rain, it's going to translate some of that some of the colder temperatures from the clouds, which is a few thousand feet up, tens of thousands of feet up. Some of those temperatures will translate down to the surface. So if you have heavy rainfall, usually you're seeing some colder temperatures, and one reason for that is because you're not only getting rain and moisture coming down from those clouds 20,000, 30,000 feet up, you're also getting some of the temperature. So the colder or the more intense the storm is, the colder that you'll actually have, and you'll probably have some of the rain transition into some snowfall. You see this multiple times a year in these winter storms, where if you get into a heavy band of rain, and I know I saw this last year, where we were in a very, very intense band of rainfall. I believe it was in December, and it was a type of rainstorm that you would normally see in August, and in 15 minutes, it went from being around 40 degrees to being 30 or 29 degrees. So you can see a huge temperature shift just by having heavy amounts of precipitation, and it ended up snowing a few inches just within that a couple hour time frame. So you can see that happening over a matter of just a few hours. If you have heavy enough precipitation. So it might start out as rain, but I think a lot of areas will transition over to snowfall. And again, it's not all high elevations. There are definitely some lower lying areas that overnight especially will be able to get some of that snowfall. So this would be by Wednesday, and what we see is that we have the storm starting to bring up a little bit of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and from the southern plains. So that's bringing in some more fuel for the storm, and it'll also start to move out to the northeast a little bit more. But it is very strong at this point, and this is the type of the time of the storm where I'm having a bit of questions on whether Denver can actually maybe transfer over into snowfall, because if this band of heavy rain was further south on this model, then I would assume that they would be under some snow just because of, again, that effect of heavy precipitation. But there are still many questions, and we're almost 6 or 7 days out by this point. So I think once we get a couple days closer to the event, we'll have much more answers on what is expected to happen. Here would be by Wednesday morning or Wednesday evening, according to the Euro. You can see heavy rain in the northern plains, but in eastern Wyoming, over some of the flatland over there, we have some of that snow, and heavy snow at that, starting to develop, and then eventually it turns all rain after that, according to the European model, by next Thursday. So here's the total snowfall. Now, don't look at the numbers, or really, you can look at the numbers, but it's not really that important, at least for the purposes of today's video. Now, I don't think that we're going to see these super duper high amounts of snowfall. I think it'll probably be maybe half this amount in most spots. Sometimes the models like to exaggerate, but what I'm looking at here, we're going to compare a few models, and I want you guys to really pay attention to the location and really pay attention to this area right here, because this is where you're going to see the biggest shift from model to model. So here's the European model. Here is the GFS model, and you can see that we see a little bit more snowfall, so I'll draw it in here. The GFS model has snowfall getting up to this area right here. So that yellow line is the GFS model. If you look at the Canadian model, you can see that's much different. It actually has that snowfall getting much further to the south. You can see that it gets all the way into the central part of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska. Now, again, is that likely? Not quite yet. I don't think it'll be anything like what this Canadian model is showing, but if this storm is a little bit stronger, again, you can see that you can have that cooling effect. And like the story I told you guys where last year something very similar to that happened, it was almost 40 degrees, and then within a matter of an hour or so, it went down to about 30 degrees in my area, and we ended up with some snowfall, and that all started with a heavy rainfall. So you can really get, with high amounts of precipitation in a short period, that can bring down some of those colder temperatures, and really I feel like that's an underestimated effect, and that can cause some issues. The models really don't pick up on that unless it's a high resolution model like the NAM. Once you get 4 or 5 days out, it's very hard to pick those type of events out. And then if we look at the Korean model as well, just to kind of give you a little bit more of an idea, you can see that we do have some of the snowfall getting a little bit further to the east, but it's mainly constrained to the Rockies and areas west of there. So there you can see what some of these models are showing, and it is quite interesting to look at the numbers, but again, numbers are not really important as of this point. I'm not going to be making a snowfall forecast until another couple of days, because it would be irresponsible for me, first of all, and then also we really don't have a good idea of what's going to happen. I'm just sharing my thoughts on what may happen, just reviewing some of the models, but this in no way is a forecast as of right now. It will be a forecast maybe 4 or 5 days later, so as we get into early next week, but as of right now, definitely this is not a forecast. This is more of a discussion of what most models have been picking up on over the past few days. Looking at the upper air map, you can see that this all is going to start off with a low pressure, which is going to cut off in the southwest. We have another one up in the northwest at this same time. So this low pressure is going to slide on further to the east, and that one in the northwest will actually intensify a little bit more. So you have a trough down in the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma, which, by the way, they have some crazy weather, especially in the fall time. You can really see some quite crazy amounts of snowfall early on in the season. It's a very interesting area because of how close it is to the Rockies, and also because there's very little elevation difference, so that can make the storms kind of just slide in and out. It can drag in some cold air, and it can bring in some really warm temperatures as well. So that's a really interesting part of the country to look at, especially with weather forecasting. But talking about the storm, you can see that we have, again, that trough into the northwest, another one digging into the southern plains. This would be by Monday morning. And this trough, which was originally down in the northwest, is now all the way into the southwest. And this big shortwave trough, or not shortwave trough, but this big trough into the western United States is what's going to be bringing in all those colder temperatures. And with the colder temperatures, of course, is going to come some snowfall. Now, just to show you that, again, the 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center from the 12th through the 16th, you can see they're indicating below normal temperatures for the west and above normal for the east. I'm thinking that probably within the next 3 weeks we'll see this start to move up a little bit, where we'll see the below normal move a little bit further east. But at least for, I think, the majority of October, it'll be fairly warm in the east, but it'll also be fairly cold in the west. And those colder temperatures are going to set the stage for potentially a few winter weather events in the Rockies. So if you want to go skiing, definitely it's this time of year that you want to start at least preparing for that, because the ski resorts are definitely getting their fair share of snowfall, and they'll start to definitely load up on snow over the next few days, especially if what some of these models are showing with 48 inches of snowfall, 70 inches of snowfall actually does play out, which would be definitely great for them, because the snow resorts were a little bit dry last year, so getting a good head start on snowfall in the month of October definitely is going to help them out. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you did enjoy, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.